Hi, and welcome everybody to another Inner Alchemy weekly webinar. They're bi-weekly, and the topic today, which I'm very excited to share with you, is thriving from within. We're going to take an holistic approach to workplace well-being. For those who haven't met me yet, my name is Dr. John Michael Salvato, and I'll tell you right up front that we tend to keep these kind of conversational, absolutely unscripted. And my right hand person who did all of the behind the scenes things that made these webinars go so smoothly is no longer with us. And as a result of that, we're going to see how well I can or can't multitask. So we just ask that everybody keep their microphones muted during the presentation, and then at the end we'll have an opportunity for you to share some comments or questions, and talk a little bit more about what it is that we do. We should take about 30 minutes for our presentation. And by way of background, for those who don't know me, we are 2 months short of 40 years that I've been doing coaching and holistic counseling, working primarily within the LGBTQ plus community and the C-suite, executive community in small and medium-sized businesses as a peak performance coach. And I come from an holistic background, and so part of the reason we created Inner Alchemy was to provide folks with trauma-informed coaching, holistic counseling, compassionate inquiry, and a platform that takes into consideration the whole person. And as a result of that, our entire potential. So let me see if I can get this going. Hopefully, everybody can see the slides in front of us. We're going to talk about the idea of moving beyond burnout and why this holistic approach matters. For so many years, I worked in a traditional clinical setting where the counseling and coaching that we did took into consideration people's mental health. And I think a lot of us can relate to that. And there's certainly a place for that approach. But what happens is that when we become unbalanced, when we put too much focus on the anxiety, on the stress, on the depression or anger or frustration, then and we don't pay attention to the other parts of who we are, we end up in a cycle where that trauma and aggravation and frustration shifts from one aspect of our lives into another. Today, we're going to talk about the what I like to call the modern professional's paradox. Most of us can relate, I'm sure, to the relentless pace of work, whether you're in an office, workplace, working from home, or raising a family. The level of stress, particularly since the pandemic, has kind of become the new normal for many folks. And that's why traditional self-care often falls short, because we've been conditioned to mistake strength with leadership and vulnerability with weakness. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes a little bit more, and why that sort of perpetuates this cycle even further. So holistic well-being is looking at the interconnectedness of our body, mind, and spirit, recognizing that it's not just what we do, and it's not how we move through things, but it's who we are. It's looking at all of those aspects of what we call the six dimensions of wellness, or the six dimensions of personhood, and seeing who all of that is and the interconnectedness that exists within that. So, the approach I'm going to take today in order to keep us on track and on time is what I like to say the workplace wellness pillars. And these are certainly not an exhaustive list. They're certainly not the totality of mental wellness and holistic wellness, but they're sort of the key areas, especially for business professionals, that I think we can all benefit from focusing on a little bit. And the first is the critic and self-sabotage. Within our brains, as our brains are designed, there is a thinking brain and a knowing brain. And the thinking brain is predominantly the left side of the brain. It's the survival side of the brain where fight, flight, freeze, and fawn responses live. And it's the side of the brain that tells us if we put our hand on a hot stove, we're going to get burned, and that learns from the first time maybe we got burned and says, don't do that anymore. Or when we see a wild animal, when our ancient ancestors saw wild tigers and things like that, that said you better get to safety. And as a result of that, our fear response is part of that survival mode. It's a learned behavior that says, hey, I better get to safety when something is dangerous. But when that side of the brain, which we use so often, which we've come to rely on in our critical thinking and evaluating situations and being aware of our surroundings, it becomes like a superhighway compared to the knowing side of our brain that so often we avoid, and it's like a broken down dirt road. And the reason for that is because we feel in that sense of knowing, we feel vulnerable. And we're taught that vulnerability is weakness. We're taught that vulnerability is dangerous. And so the left side of the brain says we got to stay away from that dirt road. And as a result, we become dysregulated. Those things that are our strengths, understanding to how to pay attention to detail, understanding how to evaluate the and prioritize the projects we need to do and things like that, they become dysregulated and we begin to self-sabotage. And that manifests in our lives as perfectionism, as avoidance and self-doubt, as victimhood, not speaking up, or chaotic data in the brain, false stories that we've come to believe based on our memories and perceptions of things that happened in the past, which may not be completely accurate, and our projections as a result of that fear of things that might happen in the future. And so what happens is the left brain is controlled by fear, and the right brain is controlled by love. That's where we get that sense of knowing, that calm abiding. And today I'm going to share a couple techniques with you that I think can be helpful in both the workplace and in our personal lives to shift from that left brain to a right brain balance, so that we're able to begin reclaiming our power. And that all begins with awareness, understanding how the brain works, understanding that this fight, flight, freeze, and fawn response system is designed to keep us alive. It is part of the survival mechanism of the brain. It exists in the amygdala of the brain, and learning how to challenge our negative self-talk, which is a matter of learning how to become more fully present so that the prefrontal cortex of the brain becomes engaged and learns how to start looking around us at opportunities that might exist in places where fear once kept us blinded. And that happens by engaging what I like to call organic mindfulness. I don't know about you, but I know so many of the people that I've worked with over these last 4 decades say, John Michael, I really wish that I had the time and the strength or the, lack of lower back pain or whatever it might be, to sit in meditation for a couple hours each day. I know that that would benefit me, but I can't do that. And so I created a framework that is something like an operating system, that if you think about your computer, if the programs on your computer are shutting down, quite and more than one program's doing that, quite often the problem's not the programs, it is the operating system. And so I wanted to create a framework, an operating system that allows us to engage mindfulness, but in a cultural context that's relevant to us in the West. Sitting in meditation is culturally relevant in some parts of the world, and it's possible in some parts of the world. And more importantly, it's something that one learns from an early age. And as a result, you don't get the lower back pains or the leg pains. You don't get the anxiety and stress over the way that the Western meditation community is told, oh, you can't think about anything. You've got to empty your mind. And as a result of all of these misinterpretations and misunderstandings of the cultural context of things like yoga and meditation, we fail to learn self-compassion, and we start sabotaging ourselves even in those things we do that are supposed to be part of self-care. So let's jump into navigating the waves of uncertainty that are going to arise for every single one of us. This webinar is not about teaching you how to never be uncertain again. I wish I had the key to doing that. If I had, it would certainly change my life. But waves of uncertainty are going to happen to us because the only thing that is constant in our lives is going to be change. And so when we approach change, we have to acknowledge that the current climate of change, whether we're talking about tech or the economy or authoritarian issues that arise in various parts of the world, including our own, can lead to stress. And stress is a response to uncertainty. It's telling us, hey, this might be a dangerous situation. So anytime there's change, we're looking to make sure that we're going to be safe. And so one of the most easy, actionable tips that I like to recommend to people is to stop looking for signs that things are going to be all right. Stop looking for signs that say you're on the right path, because I can promise you at 62 years of age, the signs are all around us. We just miss them. And if we spend all of our energy, all of our time looking for those same signs to manifest over and over and over again, what we actually end up doing is self-sabotaging. We miss the opportunities because we're looking for a sign. And there's strength in that vulnerability, in that saying, you know what? I might be wrong sometime. I might find out that this isn't the safest way to go. But what we know is that in the present moment, we are safe. In this moment, you and I, everyone watching this, is safe. We don't know what the future is going to hold for us, and we don't need to. And as a result of that grounding ourselves in the moment, we build resilience, we build flexibility. We're able to better embrace the growth mindset, and become more adaptable to the change that is certain to occur in our lives. And there's ways that we can do that. We can build that resilience through support from our network. And what I mean by that is our friends, our family, our loved ones, our coworkers, our company. We can also seek support from outside resources that are not necessarily engaged directly with our employer or with our family, with our loved ones. People who are able to be more objective and help support us through the process of cultivating that resiliency. And now that we're on that page of saying, okay, so maybe I do need to find someone to talk to, there's another key that I think is responsible for so many people not getting the kind of results or the lasting results once they've gotten the results that are necessary, and that's understanding our body. So we talked a little bit about the brain itself and the left brain versus the right brain. But one of the things that is starting to be talked about more often, I'm starting to see articles in magazines and mainstream magazines that talk about this, and videos perhaps on YouTube and things like that. But the gut-brain connection is something that science has really over the last 15 years begun to become excited about. This is where we fuel our mood and our performance. And understanding this, it might be something that's contrary to what we were taught. So, most of us that are over the age, I would say, of 30 or 40, grew up thinking, happy gut, happy butt. In other words, if you put good food in your body, you're going to have a good elimination system, and you're not going to get constipated or get diarrhea or get IBS because you're taking care of your gut. But what most of us weren't told is that happy gut results in a happier brain as well. And so on the screen in front of us, I have an illustration that shows this sort of this cycle that exists where our brain supports nutrient delivery in our body, microbial balance, and motility. It supports our healthy elimination in the gut. And that gut, in turn, supports neurotransmitters and anxiety, our mood and stress. A lot of people don't realize that serotonin, that component of our bodies that enables us to feel happy, to feel joy and calm, is the majority of it, over 75% of it, is actually produced in the gut, not in the brain. And so this balance of serotonin and dopamine and norepinephrine is all part of this gut brain axis. And what I like to tell people is imagine that the brain itself is not the only part of you that thinks. That the thinking that takes place, and science is beginning to bear this out, that the thinking that takes place actually takes place in what we call the mind, and that the mind may not necessarily strictly be in the brain. If you think about that, meeting somebody that you just thought was so hot and you wanted to date them, what happens? You don't get butterflies in the brain. You get butterflies in your stomach, in the gut. When something doesn't feel right, you don't get a brain reaction. You get a sense in your gut. And that's because the mind is this entire gut brain axis. And so what we have to do in order to make sure that we maintain a healthy gut brain axis is recognize that food is fuel. And the choices that we make in our food are not just fun, and they certainly can be. Eating healthy can be extremely fun, and the social engagement that we get during eating can continue to be fun. But when we recognize what we're doing and recognize that gut-brain axis and areas in which we might need to support or supplement what we're doing is equally important. Now, moving on again, because we're trying to keep this to 30 minutes. I want to talk about another pillar, and that pillar is DEIB and creating inclusive well-being. And I know that in the current environment, so many people are led to believe that DEI and DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, are somehow bad words. But I promise you that this is one of the most critical pillars and could be responsible for why so many of us are feeling increased stress in the current climate. Because inclusive well-being means that everyone begins to improve. Everyone begins to feel better, behave better. We know that when a company, for example, takes an approach that ensures and supports their employees' inclusive well-being, then that holistic well-being increases productivity in the workplace. It reduces the amount of illnesses and people not showing up for work. It reduces recidivism and people saying, "I'm done with being part of this team," or quitting. An inclusive environment reduces stress and it fosters psychological safety. And when you feel safe, think about it in your workplace. When you feel safe, when you feel seen, when you feel heard, you're able to be more productive. Your stress and anxiety levels are down, cortisol levels drop. That means you're going to be less likely to be sick. You're going to be less likely to have migraines and things like that. And you're in a better place to be able to hear others as well. When we don't feel like we're being seen or heard, then quite often we don't have the capacity to see or hear anyone else either because our feelings are hurt and we're feeling shut out. And if you're shut out, what good is it to talk to or listen to someone else? And that's why it's so important for us to have a system in place or systems in place that support us in the workplace and in our personal lives. So the actionable tip that I share at this point in the session is to become an inclusive a champion for inclusive culture by actively listening and seeking out diverse perspectives. If you take this challenge and adopt it today to listen more, to be more inclusive, to look for the places where you might entertain some biases that are causing you to shut other people out, then what you're doing is you're creating space so that those other people might in turn begin to mirror you as well. And so now as we shift from the workplace, we look at the pillar of mental wellness that is often overlooked, and that's sleep hygiene and spiritual grounding. And the reason I put these two together is because they really do feed off of one another. They are sort of that private place where we begin to really be able to heal and reflect and energize, and quite often, they're the places that suffer when our daytime lives are stressful, are toxic, are creating anger and divisiveness. Our sleep hygiene and our spiritual grounding are the places that often suffer. So, when you're asleep, your body has an opportunity to recharge. It has an opportunity for all of those hormones to balance back out if they've become dysregulated during the day. If your cortisol levels are high from stress, when you're asleep, they have an opportunity to return to normal. And that's why sleep hygiene is non-negotiable. We need good sleep. They say between 7 and 9 hours of sleep every single night, with less of that being responsible for early onset of dementia and more than 9 hours of sleep a night often being responsible for cognitive decline. Sleep allows our cognitive function, our mood regulation, our stress management, and our digestive system to work more effectively. It boosts our immune system. And so, some of the tips that I would share about sleep hygiene would be to maintain a consistent schedule. And I want to challenge you for the next 3 days to aim at having a more consistent bedtime and wake up time for the next 3 days. About an hour before bed, begin to dim the lights. Eliminate watching television or looking at your phone for about an hour before bedtime. I promise you, as difficult as it might be initially, you will survive, and so will anyone who's trying to reach you at bedtime. And create a wind down routine. And that wind down routine we're going to talk about in just a minute can be something really simple but powerful. And before we talk about how that works, I want to talk about anchoring our spirit or spiritual grounding. And when I talk about that, a lot of people, might put up a little bit of resistance because they're not interested in hearing about religious practices. And I assure you that what we're talking about here has nothing to do with religious superstition, any religious ideology, or religion, period. Our spiritual grounding is about our spirit. We talk about body, mind, and spirit, that essence of who we are, our true and highest selves. And so when we talk about grounding, that means we're reconnecting with our sense of purpose, our values, bringing about this greater organic mindfulness that we talked about a little bit earlier, and connecting to nature and community as well. And the benefits to this are that reduce or a reduction in cortisol levels, which means less anxiety, increased resilience, a clearer ability to think, what the Buddhist would often refer to as calm abiding, and a greater sense of meaning. And so what you can do is spend 5 minutes every day during the daytime hours in nature, or even when you first wake up in the morning, or practice deep breathing and the exercises that I'm going to share with you in just a moment. So before I share those, let's talk about and kind of wrap up what we've shared today, the key pillars of mental wellness and releasing stress are recognizing self-sabotage, uncertainty, and becoming more comfortable with change and uncertainty, gut health, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, creating a safe space for everyone, sleep hygiene, and spiritual grounding. The key message I hope that each one of you takes away, and that we're going to engage and exercise right now, very briefly, a 2 minute exercise, is that you have the power to cultivate your well being one mindful choice at a time. And so, what I want to do is we're going to do an exercise that you can begin every morning and every night before going to bed. And this is something that's so important to do it those two times. And I'm going to do it along with you. But it's the idea here is that it sets the stage for us to be more deeply rooted in the moment, where we recognize that we're chasing after signs and confirmation and completion from others in our world, whether it's recognition from our boss, recognition from our spouse, recognition from our kids or our community. When we learn how to become more rooted in the present moment, we recognize that those things around us are like a mirror. They're a mirror that shows us that wherever we feel pushback, that's something we have to really take a close look within ourselves and get comfortable with. Or maybe it's chaotic data that we have to release. And the only place we can do that is in the present moment. You're not going to be able to do it in the past because it's gone. And you're not going to be able to do it in the future because the future is never going to get there. So it's taking back your power. And so I want to invite you to close your eyes, take a few deep breaths. And as we do this exercise, know that thoughts, discursive thoughts, are going to interrupt you. And that's perfectly okay. That's just a sign that you and I are alive. They're supposed to be there. Just let them go when they arise. Just say, not now. And I want to encourage you now to just listen for the farthest away sound you can hear. And now shift your attention to the closest sound that you can hear. And if your attention's not already on the sound of your own breath, turn your attention to that sound right now. And this is an exercise that you can do when you put your feet on the ground before you get out of bed, and when your feet are on the ground before you get back into bed, every single day for 2 minutes. You should notice a sense of calm or relaxation, letting go of some of that tension that you feel in your body. And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. And so, in this state of calm and clarity, I want to challenge you to ask yourself what one small change you're willing to make starting today. You don't have to share that with us. Just ask yourself, what is one small thing that you can do that you're committed to start today in order to change your life? And I'm going to share with you a little bit about the strategies and the approach that we take. In the inner alchemy approach, the inner alchemy framework or operating system, we take a 90-day approach because the problems that we have, the challenges that we have in our lives didn't happen overnight, nor are they going to be solved overnight. This is about unlocking the wisdom within you and recognizing that you are whole and complete. And there is nothing lacking right now in your life. Self-sabotaging behaviors are simply habits that we have. If you smoked cigarettes or ate junk food in your life or still do, you recognize those as habits, and habits can be changed. It's not something lacking in you. You weren't lacking nicotine. You weren't lacking sugar. Similarly, in your stress and your self-sabotage, you're not lacking anything. They're just habits. And so the first thing we do is assess the strengths and the areas of self-sabotage. Now, for many years, I did this with a standardized test. And I've begun to move away from that because I like people to free themselves from the labels, but understand the way that that sabotage occurs in the system and in the body and in the mind. And then we work to provide insight and education to better understand the gut-brain connection so that we can become more in touch with that mind, with that calm abiding, and how to anchor ourselves in the present, regulating that balance between the thinking mind and the knowing brain. And as we do that, we cultivate new ways of employing organic mindfulness without the need for meditation or sitting uncomfortably if that's a problem for you. We create a program that's centered on your needs, your abilities, and your desires and your desired outcomes. And when we do that, we focus on unlocking the areas of your life that are being held captive right now by fear. And you might not think that it's fear that's causing these problems, but I promise you, over 90 days time working together, usually every other week, we're able to unlock incredible insights that you already have and recognition of that fear being the problem. And as you do that, you rediscover your innate resilience. So before I share contact information on the next screen, I want to invite you to unlock unmute your mics. If you have any questions or any comments you want to share, go ahead and do that. If you're watching this on the replay, go ahead and put your questions or comments in the comment section beneath the replay video because I'm more than happy to address those and keep an eye on those as folks tune into the replay. Any questions or comments from y'all? It may not be letting everyone unmute. Shoot, let me see if I can figure out how to. Oh, it says you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I was able to unmute myself. Um, because I've been working with you for a while, a lot of this was like I could check some boxes, but I could also take an inventory of things that I've been sliding on that I could tweak to like make things better. Like I could, so the two things that you mentioned that were actionable are things that I could totally implement for the next week because I know I haven't been doing them consistently. In fact, I've been struggling with the sleep thing a lot lately, and I had that when I had it really good for a while. Um, so yeah, this was a good refresher, some of it, and some of it was really refreshing to hear, especially about the gut brain connection because for a long time I've very much believed that, and it's nice to see science catching up on the and the bigger more what's the word I'm looking for in the
Big picture.
big picture, like not just in holistic medicine but like in all medicines kind of catching up with that idea. I know when I went and saw a specialist about IBS, he even talked about how it seems with women that gut brain connection plays a big role in IBS, and they were talking about support programs and not just medication, which was really interesting to see in regular medicine now. It's just
Right
so
on. Well, and you've got 2 weeks until our next, I lose track. Yeah, you've got, well, a week and a half until our next session. So take the challenge. Okay. We're going to go ahead and jump onto the next screen. On this screen, I just want to encourage everyone to feel free to connect with me. In my life, this is what it's all about. It's all about connections, whether you're looking for support right now or not. These connections are what keeps me going. So my LinkedIn address is on there. You are more than welcome to go to the website inneralchemy.online. There is no .com after that. It's just inneralchemy.online. And you can schedule a free discovery session. Those are usually 15 to 20-minute sessions where I talk a little bit more about the approach that we take and where you and I can get a feel for whether there's a good fit there. And if there's not a good fit, if we're not really connecting, or I don't think that I'm an appropriate support for you, I will do my best to connect you with some people who can. And my email address is on there too. If you have questions that you want to ask that you're not comfortable asking in the comments section, please feel free to contact me via my email address. In wrapping this up, I just want to thank everyone who's come to the live session. If you tried to get to the live session and you were more than 3 minutes late, I apologize that we had to lock you out. It just it makes it easier for us to not have the ding of new people coming in after the session starts. And I wanted to keep this to 30 minutes and apologize for keeping everybody 10 minutes more. I hope that you got value here. I don't know whether what we do here at Inner Alchemy is going to be a good fit for you. Only you can make that choice. But I do know this. 90 days from now, you and I could be celebrating the progress and the insights that you've made and the reclaiming of your power. Or you could be 90 days older, 90 days more frustrated, and 90 days, deeper into all of that anxiety if you do nothing. So the choice is yours. Let's do that discovery session. Thanks for being here, and thanks for watching the replay and sharing that replay if you would. And we'll look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks on our next session.